Hi boys and girls, today we are going to review equivalent fractions. What is a fraction? A fraction is a way to express pieces and parts when you don't have enough to make a whole. It is not a whole number, it is a part of one number. Now remember, you do not have a whole or you would use a regular number. You have less than a whole, so you need a fraction. Even though you don't have a whole, you still need to know what the whole was divided into. A fraction is a proportion which describes the size of a piece and how many pieces of that size that you have. Here are some fraction terms. Numerator, the top number or the number of parts you have. Denominator is the bottom number or the number of the equal or same parts the whole is divided into. See below for an example. Notice the denominator tells how many pieces the whole object is cut into, or in other words, its size if you had a whole. Although they are different numbers, they are the same amount. Look at the different ways one whole pie can be cut into different size pieces. The same size piece can be cut into different size pieces. These are called equivalent fractions. Remember, when we are making equivalent fractions, we are not changing the overall size of an area. We are either cutting it into larger pieces or smaller pieces. Equivalent means equal. Although equivalent fractions have different numbers, they are still the same area. Let's begin making fractions equal. Always remember the golden rule of fractions. Whatever you do to the numerator, you must do to the denominator. You are actually multiplying by one whole. That's what keeps your fraction equal. To find an equivalent fraction arithmetically, there are a couple operations you can use: multiplication and division. Let's use multiplication first. Multiply the numerator and denominator by the same number. Let's stop and think about what you just did. Notice, although I have the same size of pizza, each time I multiply, the numbers get larger in the fraction, but the piece sizes become smaller and I get more pieces. I still have the same amount of pizza. The larger the denominator in a fraction, the smaller the piece size. This whole pizza is cut into two pieces or two halves. The model shows one half of a whole pizza. The same half of slice of pizza is now cut into two pieces or 2/4 of a pizza. The overall size of the pizza remains the same, but we made two slices out of the 1/2 piece. So 1/2 equals 2/4. The same 2/4 of a pizza is now cut into 4 pieces or 4/8 of a pizza. The overall size of the beginning pizza slice remains the same, but we made 4 slices out of the 2 pieces. 1/2 equals 2/4 equals 4/8. Remember, the numerator tells how many of pieces you actually have of a fraction part. Remember, you multiply to make an equivalent fraction with smaller pieces. You get more pieces out of the same area, but each piece is smaller in size. To check for equality of fractions, you cross multiply. Here is an example of cross multiplying to check. Here are some more examples of multiplication. Don't forget to cross multiply to check. Now let's look at division for finding equivalent fractions. Divide the numerator and denominator by the same number. Now, although I have the same size of pizza, each time I divide, the numbers get smaller in the fraction, but the piece size becomes larger and I get less pieces. I still have the same amount of pizza. How do I know what number to divide the numerator and denominator by? Divide the numerator and denominator by the common denominator. A common denominator is a number which will divide evenly into the numerator and the denominator. This is called a compatible number. So in the example, 4 is a compatible number and it is a common denominator for 4 and 20. Now to find a common denominator, list the factors for each number and find the common or the same factor for both numbers. Now often the numerator will go into the denominator, so try this first to save yourself some work. If that doesn't work, then find the greatest common factor. Here is another example of dividing to make an equivalent fraction with less pieces. Remember, you get less pieces out of the same area, but they're larger in size. And cross-multiply to check. When we divide a fraction by the same number, this is called finding an equivalent fraction, and it is also called reducing or simplifying a fraction. Why should we use equivalent fractions? Because they make large numbers easier to use. Smaller numbers are simple.